Y'all here? Can we get going?
Yeah, let's start. Can you highlight me for a second, Michelle, please?
I'm gonna, yeah, okay.
Okay. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hi. So my name is Claire Kaufman, and I am the religious coordinator for the Antiochian Women of North America. And I'm so very happy that you could all join us tonight. We are so blessed and honored to have Elissa with us. She so graciously agreed to give us an hour of her time. So I'm going to ask you all to mute yourselves, please, and because I'm getting some feedback.
So I just muted everybody. So Claire and Elissa, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes.
Okay, how's that? Good? All right. So if you'll permit me, we do want to respect everybody's time. So I will introduce Elissa now, and then Elissa, I'll let you take it away from there. Okay? So please, thank you. So Elissa Bjeletich Davis, did I say that right? Bjeletich?
Sort of. It's Serbian, so it's Bjeletich. The J is like a
Bjeletich. Okay.
It's a hard one.
Sorry.
It's okay to say it wrong, honestly.
Thank you. So we have Elissa Bjeletich Davis with us. She's an Orthodox Christian author and podcaster. We will be discussing her latest book, The Art of Myrrhbearing, this evening. She is also the co-author of Tending the Garden of Our Hearts, Daily Lenten Meditations for Families, that's on ancient faith, and also Blueprints for the Little Church, Creating an Orthodox Home, and a contributor to the Grace of Being There, Single Mother Saints in Our Lives. And Behold a Great Light, a daily devotional for the Nativity Fast through Theophany, also available on Ancient Faith Publishing. I read that last year. It was fantastic. Elissa is the author of Welcoming the Christ Child, Family Readings for the Nativity Lent, and In God's Hands, a mother journey through her infant's critical illness. Her popular Ancient Faith Radio podcasts include Light Streams In, Everyday Orthodox, Raising Saints, Dear Parents, You're Not Alone, and Tending the Garden of Our Hearts with Christina Wenger. Elissa directs and teaches Sunday school at Transfiguration Greek Orthodox Church in Austin, Texas, and has contributed to several national curriculum projects. She completed her Master's of Theological Studies in 2025 and serves on the advisory board of Youth Equipped to Serve, YES, a ministry of Focus North America, and she and her husband, Chris, live in a house full of kids near Austin, Texas. So, Elissa, welcome. It's an honor and a blessing to have you with us tonight. Take it away. It's all yours.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to meet everyone, to see all of you. And I love popping into book clubs and talking about the book, answering any questions anyone has. And so I'll open up just talking a little bit about who I am and how I came to write this book, what the point of it is. And then I'll open it up to you to hear if you ran into anything that seems strange or confusing or anything that needs clarification or just that you want to talk about. So to get started, I converted to Orthodoxy. I wasn't born Orthodox. I was raised outside of any church. We had no church. My parents just sort of converted like as college students. They saw Campus Crusade for Christ and they were convinced that Jesus was God and we were all forgiven, and that was it. And there's just never any more contact with a church or a pastor or anything. So I was raised loosely Christian, and I'm grateful for it because I did grow up knowing who Christ was, who God was, reading the Bible and believing it. But unfortunately, I didn't have anyone to guide that, right? So when I got married, my husband was Serbian Orthodox, and I converted. I didn't convert to get married. It was actually afterwards. He just kind of let me find my way to it, and I did, and I was converted. I converted baptism in 1988. Sorry, 1998. But I would still say at that point, I was so unfamiliar with churches or with a real religious structure that I was thinking that what I was doing was agreeing to take my kids to church every Sunday. And I thought, yep, we're going to do that every Sunday. We're going to come, we're going to receive communion. I had no idea that there would be any more to Orthodoxy. And it actually took quite a while. I had three girls. They were all wonderful, sweet little girls, all baptized. And then my fourth child was a son named Luca. And unfortunately, Luca passed away from SIDS when he was very young. He was 45 days. And of course, it's an experience that really breaks a person down, right? But we had this priest, and he was a young priest. He had a BlackBerry. This is back when, and it was 2005. He had a BlackBerry, which was unheard of. And we were able to call him right when we were headed to with the ambulance, and he came to the hospital. And he just started answering all my questions and explaining everything. And I was so confused and torn up. And he was just right there with me. And every week he would meet with me for a couple of hours and just talk about Orthodox theology. Because I often say, like, when you have a little kid who loves dinosaurs, you just learn everything about dinosaurs. You can't help it. It's just osmosis, right? Or if they love basketball, you know who all the basketball players are. Well, with Luca, I was just fascinated with heaven. I just had to learn all about this kingdom where my son was and understand what is it like, what is happening with him, what's going on. It was just sort of confusing. And my priest sat with me and he started answering my questions because being raised outside the church, I had some crazy ideas. I mean, I would say things to him and he would look at me and say, "Who taught you that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just thought of it, I guess." And he's like, "Well, that is, a heresy that we stamped out in the fourth century." Look, I invented all the heresies. I had done all sorts of things when I was 12, and he spent a long time straightening it out. But meanwhile, I had joined the Orthodox Church, but I really thought of a lot of our traditions as being kind of dusty old things that the old Serbian ladies liked, but they weren't really relevant today. And of course, I was raised with, this fear of empty ritual, which is so funny because I don't think there's any empty ritual around here much. But when my son passed, I started going to different support groups. And here in Texas, they're like Baptist groups, very sweet people, very lovely, but they didn't have like something to give us, right? They wanted to create something tangible that would help us. So they did balloon releases and they did candlelight vigils and we wrote special prayers and we did a lot of spontaneous things that were genuinely aimed at helping us, but that really weren't helping us. And I contrasted that with my church. And I would say to my friends, I can make koliva and go to church, and my parish stands with me and prays for my son using words that are thousands of years old, written by extremely holy people and refined over the years. It's not some guy with good intentions writing something that night for the next day, right? It's, St. Basil, it's all these people. And it was just so beautiful. And I really came to understand the value of sacraments and the value of these rituals we have. Especially when you lose a child, you think, I always thought I would buy him a bicycle. I would bake him birthday cakes, but I couldn't do that, but I could make him koliva and I could bring together people to pray for him. And it just meant so much. And it really brought orthodoxy into focus. I really began to understand, okay, these are a lot of practices that are good for me and that are helpful. And I started diving in and, I never turned back. And I teach Sunday school. I love it. And I raised 5 girls and did all kinds of wonderful things with them, teaching them the faith and taking them to services. But I found that I like writing about orthodoxy, but I'm not someone who writes a really high level, complex theology. I'm less academic. What I like to do is learn the theology and then communicate it in really practical terms so that, I think we all walk around thinking like, well, that complex stuff is maybe not for me. But maybe if someone can phrase it in a way that's useful, then we can all take it and benefit from it. And so I found myself doing that in a lot of different ways over the years because it started with Sunday school, right? You're trying to teach children, so you have to simplify it, but you have to still keep it, as elegant and beautiful as it really is. And of course, Christ taught without a lot of long words. It's usually possible to express our faith in simpler terms that are easier to grasp. So that's what I've been doing. And I started being really interested in the Myrrhbearers specifically when my son died. And I was thinking a lot about the way that they handled Christ's body and the way that we handle bodies, the way that we respect bodies, we venerate bodies, right? I was thinking about Koliva, I was thinking about memorial prayers, but I was also thinking about these old traditions of preparing the body ourselves and of reading psalms over the body, right? Of refusing to cremate the body. I had grown up with them saying, like when my grandfather passed, "Oh, that's not him there. That's not him in the casket. That's just a shell." And it never quite rung true to me because if you cut my arm, you're cutting me. And if I'm paralyzed, that means my body is paralyzed. So to some extent, I am my body. And that's what we believe. We believe, no, that is something of the person. And eventually, after the resurrection, we'll have bodies again. So the human body, Christ took on a human body. It's so important and beautiful, and it's so honored in our tradition. And it's just something I love so much, and it's so beautiful. So I started out just really thinking about that, about the bodies and how we handle them, and how lovely our theology is about the human body. But so meanwhile, I moved to a new church. I met two friends, and their saints' names are Joanna and Susanna. And so they're both myrrh-bearers. And they actually happen to be people who are myrrh-bearers. Like they just it would be before like a women's group meeting, like Philoptochos in the Greek church, right? And before the meeting, I'd see one of them go into the church kitchen and she's making lentil soup. And I said, "Oh, are you going to the meeting tonight?" And she said, "No, I can't make it. I just wanted to stop by and make sure everybody had soup." And I thought, that's amazing. Like it would never occur to me. I just don't think of that. But she just goes around thinking about, she's looking at the schedule and thinking, oh, those people are going to need this. And she'll text you and say, "Hey, do you guys want me to make this? Or do you want me to pick this up?" And she's a busy person. She's got 4 little kids. She's very busy, but she's very thoughtful and she's just very aware of ways that she can help serve and very happy to do it. And they made a big impression on me. And at one point, I was able to go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And when you go to the Cathedral of the Dormition, it's a Catholic church where Mary, the Dormition happened, right? When you go upstairs, it's a nice church dedicated to Mary, but when you come downstairs, it's a chapel to all of the myrrh-bearing women. And I was there with my friend Joanna, and I started thinking about myrrh-bearers, and what I noticed was they have an icon of each of them, and in it, she has a symbol. Like one of them has a wheat, one of them has, whatever, a cross, a book. They're all different symbols to tell you about their lives. And I just looked at it and I thought, my goodness, we know something about them. Like it never occurred to me that we might know who these people are and who these women are and how lovely. And it sort of made me start thinking about that. And meanwhile, I started speaking about what I was calling the life-giving cross. And it was about suffering as a parent, like dealing with maybe miscarriage or infant loss, or even just the stresses. I mean, even having a healthy baby is a lot of hard work and it's very difficult. And caretaking, right, for an elderly parent, for a spouse, for a friend, a sibling, whatever it is, all of this caretaking, when we do it right, has like spiritual growth associated with it. It does something. And I was thinking about that and working on it and doing retreats on that and just sort of thinking about, the cross is a terrible symbol. It was all disgrace and shame, and then Christ transformed it. And it's kind of like the Midas touch. Like everything Midas touched turned to gold. Everything Christ touches, like grows new life, right? Abundant, vibrant, eternal life. And it's really amazing. Whenever you bring struggles to him, he can actually transform them. It's not that the struggle itself was good, but it's that Christ bring something out of it if we are able to figure out how to do it right, right? If we're not just complaining and feeling sorry for ourselves and getting angry, but instead we're managing to do what Myrrhbearers do. If we're managing to cheerfully serve and to find a way, right? To find a happy balance, to do this in a healthy, loving way, we start to see benefits from it. We start to become, maybe holier, really more Christ-like, right? So that was my life-giving cross retreat. And I was still thinking about the Myrrhbearers, but finally, what happened, I was teaching a class on women saints to some middle schoolers, online homeschool class. And they're so cute, but they wanted women saints, right? So I write this book of women saints. Do you know how many women saints the life story is? She was very beautiful and very noble, and she loved Jesus. And then this pagan wanted to marry her, and she wouldn't marry him, so they killed her. The end. It's just like, gosh, that's over and over and over again is maybe not the most inspiring role model, right? I mean, it's good, I guess don't marry bad guys, but it's not that I was thinking, there have to be a lot of women saints out there who've done a lot more interesting things. And of course, we don't know about all of them because a lot of times it was the monks who were recording these people's lives. And so the monks know other monks and they know bishops and priests. And so we get all of their lives, but we don't always get all of the women. But of course, when you look into it, there are a lot of interesting women, including the Myrrhbearing women. And so I started doing units for them on the Myrrhbearers, and I got excited. And then a friend called and she wanted to come do a retreat at her parish in Niagara Falls. And I said, sure, I'll do a retreat. I'm thinking I'm going to do my regular retreat. And she goes, well, we just renamed our women's group Martha and Mary. So I want you to do a retreat on Martha and Mary. And I thought, oh, I like the Myrrhbearers. Let's do it. So just as I'm finishing that, Ancient Faith reaches out and said that they want to do a women's retreat. And I was saying, you know what? I think I'm just too busy. I don't think I can do this right now. One of my kids was graduating high school. We had a lot going on. And they go, well, we just really thought it would be a good one for you because the focus is the Myrrhbearing women. And I was like, oh, I'll be there. Like, that's a great idea. I need to sit down and research this and work it out. So the first two parts of the book are from that retreat. And I gave it at Antiochian Village a while ago. It was maybe 2023, 2024. But I liked it. I find the Myrrhbearing women so inspiring. I think it is helpful to explore some female saints that we don't know about. We know about the Myrrhbearing women. We celebrate them, but we don't really know who they are. And sometimes we don't know who they are, right? Susanna, we don't know a lot about, but there is a lot of information out there, and it's really interesting and exciting, I think, to learn it. But also, it's so instructive to see how these women who stood by Christ and provided all of this support, how they held it together and took care of things and what their life stories turns into. So I think it's a beautiful example of how serving in this way, again, with a loving heart in a sort of healthy, cheerful way, to do that it's transforming them just as it transforms us. So I thought it was very exciting. And it's all kind of an outgrowth. You can see where the line goes, right? It's like about death and suffering and struggle and caretaking, and then it just sort of moves right into the Myrrhbearers. But anyway, I really enjoy the topic. And to me, what I think really I ended up writing about, and I don't think I knew this when I started out, I think really the point of this book is that the way you achieve theosis can be by Myrrhbearing. That here's a practical, doable thing in our lives that we can do to achieve theosis. Because I think as you go through these saint tales, you get up toward the end and it starts becoming this really amazing thing where by serving the other, they're encountering Christ. They're coming to know Christ and they're being transformed. They're becoming Christ-like. And I think it's really a key to how a lot of them really became saints. And I think it's a key to how we can live in hopes of serving God and of loving Christ and of coming ever closer and find out that, you know what, maybe at the end, that's where we'll be. And maybe we don't count on it. We'll just do it, right? Head down, just do it. But I think it's really a viable thought because I think so often when we think about theosis, um, a lot of times it includes like a lot of prayers that maybe a monastic could undertake, but that might be hard in our daily lives. And we're always kind of down on ourselves, right? Like, oh, I need to pray more. Oh, I need to do the Jesus prayer more. And maybe we do, and we should always strive to do that. But I think really, as I examined it, I really became convinced that the way to theosis is through this service, through myrrh-bearing. And there's that Metropolitan John Zizioulas was a beautiful theologian. And I was reading some of his sermons, and that's what they were saying. He was talking about how when you're born, you're a biological being, right? Like you're a person with a body. But when you're baptized, you transform into an ecclesial being. You're part of the church, you're part of the body of Christ. It's a different kind of being. And he's saying it can sometimes it's kind of dormant before we awaken to it, but we're really transformed by it. And we have this ability to grow spiritually and to develop this abundant life that Christ wants us to have. And he really clearly is saying when we cannot just love the people we possess, like that's my family and my friend, but if you can just love everybody like Christ does, that something happens in you and you become this ecclesial being. You become, Saint Maximus would have written about. He talked about beings like a certain kind of becoming something that really is theosis, right? That really is a next level of human being. And it's what we're all supposed to become. But sometimes it feels far away. And Metropolitan John was really tying it to love. And I think he's right. And I think it's this kind of love. I think it's myrrh-bearing love, maybe other kinds. I'm sure there are a lot of paths to theosis, but I think for a lot of us, this is really like in front of us. This is something that maybe has already been set in our laps that we're called to do. And maybe that's our path. But so that is sort of how I got to do this, how I came across the idea and what it has meant to me. And it's really when we kill our ego, we focus our love on Christ, and then we serve our fellow man, we serve other people lovingly. That's when we're transformed. Those are the steps. Kill the ego, focus love on Christ, and then serve others with a really loving, practical way, a real way. And I'm excited about it. I think when I first started the book, as I said, I wrote the first two as part of a retreat, the first two parts, going through the gospel and identifying the myrrh-bearing women, um, which was a challenge as well, because the myrrh-bearing women are hard to find. You find like a sentence here and a sentence there, and you put them all together. And and a lot of the things, it's like, well, it seems like maybe this is the case. Of course, we could be wrong, but nobody seems to have written down another alternative. So we'll go with this one, right? But I think it's inspiring to think about them as real people that we can relate to and that we could emulate. But yeah, so it started out the two parts. And then my editor was looking at it and she was like, you know what you have to do? You have to add stories of other saints who are myrrh bearers. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea, right? And so a couple of friends and my editor, everyone was giving me names of people I should look into. And I went through, I put in my favorite saints already, but I also included some of the saints they had suggested that I had never heard of before, like St. John the Merciful. I found him so neat. And it was just such a beautiful kind of myrrh-bearing spirit. And I thought he had to be included. So there were some saints, people will ask me, well, why is this saint not there? Why not? Because you can only write about so many saints, and we just have thousands of them. In fact, recently at a book club Zoom, someone said to me, well, why wouldn't you include Deacon Stephen and the first deacons? Aren't they really servants? And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, they are. Like that would have been a good inclusion. Although now that I think about it, I don't know, maybe clergy is kind of a different category. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the same thing. I guess it is. But anyway, it's not an intentional exclusion of anyone. There were a couple of saints that I felt like it would be weird to talk about them that way, or it might be a stretch or something. So I didn't work on it. But the ones that really struck me as people who were loving and really cared about everyone and were doing service and the kind of service that is like accessible and practical that we can think about doing in our own lives. Those are the saints I brought in because those are my favorites. As I was writing it, I was a little bit worried about, not worried, My family and my in-laws are all Protestant, and I wanted to be able to like speak to them without being off-putting. And I know in all of my books, I always think about this, like, because that's my family. So from the first book, there's always been an effort to kind of stop and say, this is why we have saints. This is why we venerate relics, right? To just kind of build it in so that if you weren't sure what that was, or if you thought that was okay, it would kind of reassure, right? To bring them into it in a healthier way and an easier way without setting off the alarms that we all had built in as Protestant children. We just have all these suspicions and worries, and we hear these terms and they work us up. But so actually, I had hoped not to say like Saint John the Merciful too many times. I wanted to introduce them as Saint John, but then just call him John for a while. Like, can we just let's just talk about him? And we all know he's a saint, and we all respect him and love him. But I didn't want to set that off, so I didn't get my way on that. We did use the word saint a lot more than I'd wanted, but I have been very excited to hear that a number of non-Orthodox readers have found that it's kind of recuperated their feeling about who the saints are and what saints are. I think, sometimes an image outside the church, a misunderstanding might be that, we think the saints are just magic and they're just names that we call on to do stuff for us. And they're not necessarily really grasping it as like these are historical Christians. Because I could see, an American Protestant, a Baptist or non-denominational, I could very well see them saying like, "Oh, Jerry Falwell of blessed memory," wanting to saint him. They don't, because they don't do that. But I think they know historic people in recent history that they think about that way, right? Like Luther and Wellesley um, and Calvin, but they don't do that. But I think going through and telling stories like this and focusing on like their Christ-like qualities, I'm hoping that it helps. I know there are a couple of people that said it felt a little more comfortable by the end. I'm grateful, right? We can't convince everybody of everything, but at least we can approach things in a way that's friendly and makes people feel comfortable and understands what we're really doing here. Not that we're making magical people who do our every bidding, but actually, in fact, that there are really beautiful historical Christians, and our Lord is the God of the living, not the dead, and so they're living. But at any rate, so that's just a little side note on when I was writing it. But I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear what, any questions you had, anything that you thought about. And I'm just looking through the comments. Thank you guys. Right. Reminding non-Orthodox people that St. Nick was a priest and then a bishop. The it is very funny, right? Like they don't connect this persona of a saint with a real live historic being. And actually there's a movie recently where there's this Order of St. Nicholas, and it's like this white supremacist thing. And I was just chuckling because I was like, well, white supremacists probably wouldn't pick like a Middle Eastern bishop to be their but they don't know if that's who he is. They don't know where he's from or even that he is a real person, right? He's just a Coca-Cola ad. But anyway, so yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's really nice to be able to welcome people and get them to be more friendly to these ideas. It's important to me, of course, because that's my family and my in-laws, and I want them to be comfortable with what I'm doing, and I think they are. And I'm reading, who is it who's writing about Tobit? Cheryl, will you tell me about your experience with Tobit? This looks
So
beautiful.
we were our Mercy Mail team was, all of us were in tears this morning because as I was because we've been discussing the book with our parish, and as I was reviewing this week and also planning for this Mercy Mail, we were going to discuss section 3 and the section on Tobit, and you kind of relate about Tobit, but then you had that quote in there. And this is a person who had gone away from the church as a teenager and not come back, and he passed away, but the family wanted him to have a funeral in the church. And and many of us in the church knew the family. It's just that the children in the family had gone away. And we were just kind of, you know how it is, it's like, well, they want us to do this and this and this and this and this. And then as I'm reviewing this, I run across this highlight, and it's on page 171, and it's that sentence. It made all the difference for my whole team today.
She's put the sentence in the chat if you want to look at it, but it's, even if the children of God forgot that they belonged to him, Tobit did not.
Yeah. And that I want to make a sign for my Mercy Mill team, just to remind us that it's not whether the funeral is for an active member or whatever. This is what we are called to do. So, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow, that's really powerful. That's amazing. But yeah, I love Tobit. I've always loved Tobit. Well, not always. I'd never heard of him, right? And then I became Orthodox, and I was going, whoa, we have more books. What is this? And I read Tobit, and it is delightful. It's short. If you haven't read it, pick it up. It is really cute. It's really funny. But Tobit, specifically, he's burying in Babylon, in the Babylonian captivity, he's burying Jewish people who've been thrown over the wall. When they die, the Babylonians just throw them away. And of course, especially in Jewish culture, but also in Christian culture, we bury our dead. We don't leave them out there for the birds to peck at, right? That's a terrible, terrible dishonor and injustice. So Tobit, nobody would go get these bodies. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they were afraid of being punished. Tobit kept sneaking out. He'd climb out over the wall. And there are stories where he's just sitting down to a beautiful dinner. He's welcoming his family members home. And he's like, oh no, they threw someone over the wall. And he just gets right up because he can't eat until he's buried him. So he gets up in the middle of the night and he's going out there and they're moving the bodies and burying them. And he's exhausted. And but what struck me when I was writing this, and what I hadn't noticed before, was that there's a lot in there about how Tobit and his family never forgot God. But a lot of the Jews in Babylonian captivity were assimilated into Babylonian society, and it was done on purpose. They taught them all Chaldean letters, they gave them Chaldean names. We see with the three holy youths and with Daniel how they do this. It's a very intentional thing to assimilate the culture. They go and take away from the Jews all of the most valuable things. They take all the gold and they take all the smartest, brightest young minds. And so they're trying to really take away their future. And so Tobit refuses to forget God and to forget his traditions, but a lot of them did. But if it was an Israelite, he would go over that wall and go get them regardless. I realized, according to this book, he's really one of the only faithful ones. And yet he's rescuing all these people. They wouldn't have been faithful like that. And I just thought it's so beautiful that you could imagine him being angry about it, being judgmental, saying it's terrible how they're behaving. But instead, they're just his brothers. He just treats them like, we're God's chosen people, and this is how we treat each other. And I thought it was just such a lovely thing, and he's really neat. But yeah, that is beautiful. That's especially beautiful, if you do have children who've walked away from the faith or from the church, or a lot of times people come back, but sometimes they don't. And it's sort of a comforting idea, right? That they're still God's children, and that we can remember that and we can hold on to that. And we can treat them as such, which is lovely. But so what kind of questions came up? What kind of thoughts did you have while you were reading? Were you curious about things? Did you notice my typo? There's an error in there. When I'm talking about one of the Myrrhbearers, we're going through kind of Jesus' family tree. At one point, someone is clearly Mary's sister-in-law, who is the mother of Jesus's cousins, their brothers. And then at some point, I think she's Jesus' sister-in-law, and I said she was his aunt. That's what it was. I said she was his aunt when she was not. But it was easy to confuse because she would be about aunt age because her kids are his age. And so I would think she would feel like an aunt, but technically she was a sister-in-law. But I missed that one. But did you guys have any questions or run into anything you found interesting? You can put up your hand and all. It's so hard on Zoom because you can't see everybody at once, but I'll watch for raised hands. I think Zoom will tell me about them. I hope. Claire.
Okay, just had to unmute myself. So when I'm reading your book, it's my second time through, I realized how much research you must have been doing. You found tradition that's not included in the Bible. And when you were doing your research, is there anything, I'm sure you had a lot of surprises along the way, but what was one of your big ones, if you don't mind sharing that with us?
Well, I would say really just the idea that we could know who the Myrrhbearing women are, right? They're not really known saints. They're not, but it was a lot of research. I would say the surprise was that it was well rewarded, that I really found a lot out there. I was doing it while I was working on my master's degree in theology. And so we had this great access to all of the seminary libraries in America. And so I was able to find just beautiful ancient texts, really old retelling, like, because there are these older stories of saints' lives. They're like Saint Mary of Egypt. They're really long stories, actually, with a lot of detail. And what we're getting when we get our Saint of the Day notification, that story is really a small version of it. And it's a wonderful thing that we have it. And we couldn't read a novel on every saint every day. But there really are still existing these amazing detailed things. Like St. Basil's family and his life were just so well documented and so good. And I think I just felt that way about most of them, that I felt really lucky. And the stories I would find, their life stories, would often be like much bigger than what I wrote in the book. But I was trying to focus in on the myrrh-bearing aspect. So maybe I didn't go into like he was a bishop, but he didn't want to be a bishop, but his father, the cool stories are like neat miracles or different things. Because I was trying to keep it focused. And I was really thinking of it as you may read about this saint somewhere else. But when you read about it here, you're reading about how this saint was a myrrh-bearer and how that functioned in their life. And then when you read their biography somewhere else, it'll probably have very different emphasis because most saints' lives aren't focused on that. But I thought it would be of value to just go in kind of just from this angle and kind of try to interpret them from that angle. And I was amazed at how many existing texts there are, because I knew modern saints we could find, but they're just beautiful things to find. Or like Saint Olga's granddaughter wrote her life story. She interviewed all the family and wrote down quotes from all of them. I was like, my goodness, thank God, look at this treasure trove of information. So I was delighted to find that some of the older saints really had very thorough biographies written back in the day. So it was great.
Yeah, I was wondering about how you had access. Where did you find all that information? So thank you for that.
Yeah, I was going into all the theological art libraries and getting out, and it's funny because they don't advertise themselves as someone's life story. It will be embedded in another book. And then I might even have been reading it for another reason, or I might have just found it like I'd open books and go to the index and just scan for interesting saints. And sure enough, somebody's life would be in there. It was great. It was a wonderful experience. I loved it. But,
Thank you.
now I can see your hand up, but I can't see your
Yeah,
finger.
that's me. Hi. So I haven't finished the book yet, but I'm pretty much enjoying it. Like you said in the beginning, it's very easy to follow. It's not too complicated, which I love, because although I was born as a Orthodox, but still you always need to learn more and more and more. And I was very, very excited because we're having our retreat in our diocese on March 7th. And the retreat is, let me read it for you. The topic is raising children with guidance from Saint Olga of Alaska. So
Oh,
I was
beautiful.
so I was very excited to get, I haven't got to her chapter, but when I saw, like, oh, I can't wait. So I'm reading quicker so I get to it before the retreat. So thank
Oh,
you.
that's neat. Of course, yeah, and you can always skip ahead if you need to before March 7th to get it in. But yeah,
No, I should be
that's a
there by
great,
then.
that's working together very nicely. That's a good synergy. I like that. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
interesting too, mothering advice from Saint Olga. So you can take a saint and look at them from a different angle and just think of, like, you just learn all of this beauty. And then another time you come back, like, it's like, oh, as a myrrh bearer, as a parent, as, it's beautiful. That's really neat.
She's the first like female saint from North America, so which is like more exciting as well too.
Oh
More
yeah.
like yeah.
And she's native here. And most of
Mm,
our saints are like Russians who came over. And there's one Serbian saint now who was born here. He was the first priest born here, Saint Sebastian, and he's from Jackson, California. And he was actually born in the U.S. to immigrants, but she was really native to America more than the rest of us, right? And so it's
mm,
really beautiful to have the first, like, American born, well, not the first native person, of course, because there were men already, but to have the first native born woman,
female.
like, really
Yeah.
from here. It's beautiful. I love it. And she's such a neat saint. And it's interesting too, because she's known so much for women's issues, like for working with women who've suffered, like, sexual violence and all these different things. And she's really the one saint that is, I think, most associated with those things. And she's the first woman from here. Like, just what a gift to all of us to have this
It
woman
is.
in our midst and in the
And I'm
cloud of
looking forward
witnesses
for
from us.
our parish as like our retreat.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. It's neat. It's neat. I wish I could be a fly on a wall. I'd like to know. I'd like to know about parenting advice from Mother
We're
Olga.
gonna
She's
try to
really.
record the retreat. Well, hopefully we can record it successfully. And if we do, we'll share it on Facebook on the page.
Oh, cool. That's great. Well, I
Yeah,
hope you're able to do it because I would love to get an idea of what I'd love to know what they're saying. That's
me
neat.
too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really neat. But how anyone else? Did anything strike you as confusing or difficult or good? I mean, you could just say you liked something. Kate Sweet.
Okay. Hello. I wanted to say I listened to the audiobook version, and it was amazing that it was your voice, and I was so excited that you narrated the book. And gosh, what I wanted to ask you was, so like how long? I mean, I'm definitely gonna have to go back and like read the parts about the actual like Myrrhbearers for Jesus, because so much of that was like, oh my gosh, like hearing all of this information for the very first time. But I was wondering, like, how long did it take you, like, in total to like get all the research
Oh,
and
gosh.
like,
Well, I started working on it in 2023 for those retreats, and a lot of the material was done then.
gotcha.
But I would have finished it. Trying to think, if it came out in May, it had to be finished by like November of 2024. So it was about 2 years,
Wow.
which doesn't actually sound like a lot when I think of how much research it was, but I was like in graduate student mode and
I'm sure, yeah.
I was researching everything all the time. I was reading all the books and doing all the, now, I don't read anything now because I'm done, but I loved doing it. And I
Yeah,
might just have to do it again because it was just great.
your discussion and questions at the end of each chapter were just, I'm going to be sitting with them. It kind of changed my life a little bit. I have a young baby. This is actually, his name is Basil. So very much enjoyed listening to the chapter on St. Basil. but yeah, just definitely going to be sitting with it for a long time. And then this is my daughter Emma, and she just wanted to tell you something.
I just wanted to say that I'm really enjoying the book that you wrote, Tending the Garden of Our Hearts, and like loving it a lot. Like I've started to try to read the Bible before, but I've never actually gotten to really like read the whole thing. And there's like parts of the Bible I like that there's like parts of the Bible in it and quotes from that kind of stuff, because I enjoy those kinds of stories. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. I'm so glad you're reading it and you like it. That I liked that book too a lot. I enjoyed writing that. But you're right, you can learn about different saints and also Bible stories, and it's all kind of just mixed in there. And it's I like it. And it ends with questions too to help you remember it. And I'm just so glad you're enjoying it. That's great. That is great. Yeah, I think it's a good book for adults and kids. You know what I mean? I think it's a really smart book for kids and kids love it. But I think when you're reading it, your parents are learning something too, honestly, because it's a lot of stuff we don't always know. We have to look it up. But yeah, reading the Bible can be hard, especially if you try to go from the beginning to the end, because you get a couple of good books and then it's just like books that are just kind of boring. Like I'm sure they're very important books, but they're not very fun to read, and it can stall you out and stop you. But but it's good that you're trying to do it. And you can just start with the New Testament. You can start just with Matthew and just go from there, because that is maybe the most important part of the Bible in a way, right? Because it's the part about Jesus. And that part is a little bit easier to read because it's stories and it makes sense. Because some of the oldest parts, you know, I don't know if you got to like Numbers or Deuteronomy, but those are tough going. They're hard books. Even the early ones are hard books. The Old Testament is tough, but I'm proud of you for trying and working on it. But you're right, you'll learn a lot of it from other places too. That might be the best way. Read a book about the Old Testament instead of reading it directly. But thank you. I'm really glad you're enjoying that. And Kate, you mentioned the questions at the end of the chapters in the Art of Myrrhbearing. I did have several people reach out to me and ask me, well, what's the answer to this one? And I was like, well, I don't know the answers. Like, I have no idea what the answers are necessarily. They're probably different for all of us, but it's more, it's more just aiming to get us to think about things, to think about how this challenges us or moves us. And, those are the things I love thinking about. That's what I put down there. It's like what I'm enjoying contemplating after reading this, what I want to ask myself. And
I had moments in the beginning of the book where I was like, can I even call myself a Christian? Because it just was so hard hitting. And you did such a good job of making it so clear of like, no, this is the way. Like we are all called to this path of and to perform the art of Myrrhbearing. So we're so blessed by you and your work, and just thank you for bringing so much meaning to just like my own little family's life. So
thank God. Thank God. I'm so happy to hear that, Kate. Thank you. But yeah, it is actually kind of hard when you first understand. When you're thinking about the last judgment and Christ is saying, I was hungry and you fed me. And then he says, they're going, Lord, Lord, when did we not feed you? And he's like, nope, you didn't feed me. What was it? They're saying, we did miracles in your name. And yet they've been rejected by Christ because they weren't loving others and taking care of others. It's a little scary actually for a minute, because you're just like, oh, I haven't really been focused on that yet. Although you're a mom, so you're maybe okay, because probably you have been caretaking some people. You've been taking care of somebody. But so you've got a head start. And really our lives, the way they're structured, are kind of set up to take care of others and to love others. And whether we've even been looking for those opportunities, they very often just land in our lap, right? Someone gets sick, someone needs something. And so it's probably not that bad. If you really were to think about it honestly, most of us probably have done things that qualify as this. But it's just so good to be aware of it and to think about kind of how our attitude is and the state of our heart while we're doing it. You know, whether it's really something we're just doing out of love, and it's just an extension of all this joy, or if it's, you know, maybe we're grudging along and frustrated about it. It's probably not as helpful if we're doing that. Probably not as good for theosis. But I do want to say,
Yes, can I say something? Yes.
oh, yes.
I was just screaming. Please go ahead. I would probably go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I give women's retreats sometimes, and I always like to say, as much as we should be giving selflessly and all that, we also have to keep in mind that we have to take care of ourselves. And I think sometimes we start getting that and asceticism in our head, and it's like, I have to die to myself. I just have to keep going and going. But you really like squeeze the joy out of it when you do that. So it's okay to stop and get a little rest in between. But anyway, that's all I wanted to add. What were you going to say?
Oh, hi. This is Layla from San Antonio, and you came to our church a long time ago.
Yes.
Thank you so
you
much.
got my godson Philip
Yes,
there.
the book was great, really. I didn't finish it all yet, but still, what we read, we had a discussion last Sunday at our church, like a couple of ladies, and the thing that they were like asking, we have, a lot of converts, like newly Orthodox, and they were asking why we don't see these stories in the Bible. Well, as I told them, the Bible, it is like about Jesus, not about the others. You can find all the stories in the tradition on the old books, that's why. But it was, loved of them, but they were confused, some of them, how just like human life, Jesus on earth, that he has all these families, like a sister or something. They were like just, okay, because he was a human on earth, he was like us living, and he has family, and he has like many occasions to celebrate with them. So it was good for them to know the other side of Jesus' life and these women that they were with him, the Myrrhbearing women. It was great.
Oh,
So they loved it, but it was like this, like some kind, they want to see it all in the Bible. You can't put all the stories in the Bible. This is the thing,
That's right.
But
Yeah.
it was great. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, I'm so
Thank you.
glad. I'm so glad. And it's true, I know Protestants, I was too, they really are trained to believe what's in the Bible and to not believe it if you can't find it in the Bible. But the big thing that they miss is that the church didn't write like the Bible as like this one document that contained everything. The church wrote a lot of things. And then 300 years later, they said, you know what? These are the most sacred ones, right? It's not that this is meant to contain everything. In fact, John says, you could fill the whole world with books and not contain everything, right? That the Bible tells you that the Bible's not going to be all of it. And yet, here we are confused. But I know my own family, it's always, a lot of like, well, how do you know these things? And I'm like, well, they're written in history books. Like if I wrote about George Washington's life, would you suspect that I had just made it up? Or would you assume that there really are historical texts with information about people who were famous and beloved? Of course, there were texts about them. It's interesting. It's very interesting that there's a way that in American Christianity we can kind of limit ourselves, and we're doing it intentionally to block out the noise. And admirably, I think they're doing the same thing we do in the church when we're trying to block out heresies and to keep untrue things out of the church. But unfortunately, they're blocking out a lot of true things too. And it takes a little while for them to begin to trust it. But hopefully, I did footnote everything in this book very carefully because this stuff is so hard to find. And I even had my editor, one of the editors was a priest, and he was going, no, that's not true. And I was like, no, it's right here. And he was surprised. He didn't think it was real, but there it was in this text, and it was real. But it's definitely an eye opener, I think, for Protestants. And I'm so glad because I'm so happy to be able to bring them this whole cloud of witnesses that Paul, it is in the Bible, right? The cloud of witnesses is in the Bible, saying, God is the God of the living, not the dead, is in the Bible. There are sort of references to the saints. But yeah, you're right. If there's not a catalog with life stories, it's a hard sell. But hopefully these kind of projects help. Because the more we can get, our country kind of understanding the rest of Christianity, it's always better. It's always going to be better.
I think Deanna may have had a question. Do you still have a question, Deanna? You might
Yeah.
have to unmute.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it wasn't unmuting, but thank you. I was a little late to get here. I do apologize for that, but I was just really curious as through all your research and going through, like you said, finding little nuggets here and there. Was there anything that you found that just you thought was really interesting, but didn't quite fit in the book, or you wished you could have put it, or maybe even after you wrote the book, you found something and you're like, oh, that would have worked too. Is there anything like that that came up with?
There have definitely been moments like that since finishing the book. There would be some great saint, and I'd be like, oh, could have done a chapter on that and what I would have put in it. And sometimes I think about doing a part 2 of just saints' lives, of interesting things like that. But I don't know. I don't quite feel it yet. We'll see. We'll see what it comes to. But I would say, yeah, there were times when there were really interesting stories that seemed like they might be true, but there wasn't an Orthodox source on it. And the sources were questionable. Like the Western Church has a lot of stories about the early saints and a lot of saints, and they always end up with the apostle going to France and dying in France. Everybody goes to France and dies there, except the couple who die in England. And I felt like some of these traditions just don't seem founded except in like French literature. And so I just didn't feel comfortable putting those in. Occasionally there would be an asterisk where I'd say, hey, there's this really neat Western custom. I don't know if it's true, but here it is, just because I thought it was cool and it was edifying. And there's someone who believes it, But yeah, there were a number of things that I was sort of disappointed that we didn't have an answer to that question. But mostly I was able to keep it in there, to put it in there. But yeah, mostly I would say it's just that there are other saints that I wouldn't mind writing about at some point. So someday maybe there'll be another one. I don't know. I'm out of the habit of researching now. I'd have to get back into it. But I'm
that would be a good book. That would be a really, really good, because I think, well, I'm coming out of I'm a catechumen now. So coming out of a Protestant background is around, I'm just blown away by the saints. So, and I think a lot of people are that, because, if you were a Protestant before too, you realize that they don't tell you anything about it. I mean, you don't learn about it.
They're suspicious of it. I mean, some denominations embrace it, right? I think some Lutherans, Episcopalians will embrace it. But I know, for the most part, we just try not to think about them in the Protestant world. But yeah, it would be a good thing. I remember when I first converted, I took a class and everyone would talk about all these different saints, and I'd write them all down and I'd go home and read it up on their lives, and then the next week I'd come in, they'd be talking about different saints. I was saying to my priest, I was like, how am I going to find all of these saints? Like, where can I learn all of this? When is it finished? Every week it's like 5 new people. And he goes, you're not supposed to know the whole picture. God gives everyone a piece of this puzzle so that we'll come together and solve it together, and that we grow together in communion, and that's really his project. Like, that's why there's so much information and why it's so widespread. It's so that you have to encounter each other to get it. And I just thought that's neat. And it's good for me and people like me who are like, I've got to know all the things. I've got to get my A in this, you can't do that in the faith, right? You can't try to do all the things, be all the things, know about all the things. You have to accept the fact that you'll find it slowly with one another. And it's beautiful, really, when you think of it that way. But we're coming up on 8 o'clock, so I don't know if we need to stop.
Yeah, I think a couple of things before we let you go, Elissa. I just want to thank you so much for giving your time to us tonight. You're always such a pleasure to listen to and be around. Can you tell us how we can follow you? Like, what's your next project? How can we keep track of you?
You can actually put my name in. ElissaBjeletichDavis.com is a website. And because I have done a lot of different things in different places, and it's been 20 years of doing these things, they're all over the place. There's this one website where I just list all of it with links so that you can find things if you find them interesting. And right now I've started up a new interview show on YouTube, and just talking to different Orthodox Christians about their experiences and just different interesting topics. And if you want to look for that, that's called Orthodox Unscripted. So that's a current project. I have a few ideas for another book. They're not, I always kind of just wait. I don't try to decide what to write. I just wait and I let God like just slap me in the face with it and say, do this. And then I do it. So that's what happened with the Myrrhbearing Women like 8 times. And finally I got the clue and started doing it. But we'll see. We'll see what he sends next.
Okay, thank you. And one more thing. The
Antiochian.
Little tongue-tied. You did all the talking and I'm tongue-tied. So the Antiochian women commissioned to have an icon written or painted for us. It's an icon of the Virgin and Christ. This icon was painted or written by Chudi Aaron Kimmet, especially for the Antiochian Orthodox Christian women of North America in celebration of our 50th anniversary. And we would like to present you with it's called, can you see it?
No, it's not. Here, push it closer a little bit. The camera's, oh, that's beautiful.
It's called the
really
Protitera icon. Let me.
Right. Oh, it's great. It's a beautiful one, though. That's a really nice one. That's lovely. Oh, thank you.
I don't know if
That's
we can.
neat.
Sorry.
How lovely to have an icon in honor of your 50th anniversary.
If you turn your background off, you have to turn your background
Yeah,
off for us to be able to see it.
Yeah,
Okay, hang on a
it's really
second. I'm sorry.
stuff.
Hang on 1 second. Let me do that. 1 second.
Yeah, all those settings are so annoying.
Okay, now here I am. Can you see?
Not yet. Your camera's off now.
Hold on. I'm sorry.
Maybe thinking about it.
There you go.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's really nice. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. How neat to have it especially commissioned.
Just a token of our appreciation and gratitude to you, and I'll be sending this off to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciated this. This is really nice to get to spend some time with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time, and thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. God bless you. God bless all of us.
Thank you. Good night.